Welcome back, everybody, to the Functional Code. We are super excited to bring you another episode today. We are going to be talking about the evolution of fitness, anything from home workouts to gyms to classes to what they've done all the way back from thousands of years ago till now. And then we're going to be touching on some things that you guys can absolutely do at home to up your workout space game. As always, I am Dr. Addy.
And I'm Dr. Jace. And yeah, we're going to dive into some of these specific fitness apps that you can find resources on, different classes, things that do really well, not only from the gyms and what etiquette that person may have in the gym, some do's, don'ts, but even at the end, we're going to go over some personalized videos and walkthroughs of the reasons why we do this, as an example of an upper body workout, an example of a lower body workout.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that at the end there.
And if you guys are interested, it should be timestamps,
Yep.
so you guys can just jump ahead if that's what you're interested in right now. But hope you guys listen through everything. I'm actually super excited for the beginning of this podcast because the other day I was lifting weights and I was thinking to myself, what were people doing thousands of years ago? Were they lifting weights? We talk about some of these gladiators in the times that were built, quote unquote, built from stone, like they looked just chiseled. But how did that start? Who started thinking like that? And Doc and I are always curious about evolution and how did we get to where we are now? And it would be so fun to be a fly on the wall on the first guy that would be like, hey, should we start lifting something repetitively for a year and see what we look like? Who was the first one to step on that thought process? But anyway, Doc's going to do a great job of explaining what things looked like thousands of years ago, and I'm excited to hear all about it. So, Doc.
Yeah, so when we look back on, like Doc said, the gyms and the whole model itself, it's evolved based on time, resources, and knowledge.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things that we're still learning from back in over hundreds of thousands of years ago, even from when we evolved from chimpanzees, and how the growth of the brain drastically started to accelerate roughly, if I remember right, it's about 100,000 years ago, give or take. And that drastic acceleration changed and influenced the human race as we go through. So evolution is not necessarily always for the positive traits, but it's the traits that were gone through over years and years, and how it slowly changed not only us as humans, but also as the society is
And
evolved.
one factor, was that brain size?
Brain size.
Brain size, yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then there's other characteristics,
Yep.
but the main part was brain size and that change and acceleration of growth. Thus how we developed in our thinking. So with that being said, when we look to the ancient gyms, there was a theoretical change in my mind of you had to survive from the environment that you're in. You had to do hard laborious jobs just to eat and support you and your family or your community tribe. So that's probably changed then to the ancient gyms about 3,000 years ago, where in Persia, there was the first known remnants of what fitness centers were. And I might butcher the name, so I apologize. Zurkana?
Yeah. Zurkana. Yeah. Zurkana. I don't know.
Something like, again, apologize if we didn't say that, but that's what they're known as in terms of places where you can go and work out or do physical exercise activity, whether it was martial arts and training, which is different than wrestling, which is then different than just more or less doing certain tasks that are more challenging for them in that time. And I think there's probably some correlation to some of the Chinese culture and how martial arts were adapted hundreds of thousands of years ago. I think that probably had influence to the rest of the world. Where it specifically stemmed from, I don't know if we have all the knowledge, or at least that we know thus far, but just to give you a general understanding of where we were and how everything has quickly evolved, just so we can make these changes moving forward from there.
And Persia is super interesting because they were the first to build these Persian clubs. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Persian clubs being used, Doc. Have you seen that before?
Please.
For those of you that are interested, you should look up the Iron Sheik. He was a WWF wrestler. It has nothing to do with the actual fact of fakeness. This was actually real. What he would do is he would take these ginormous Persian clubs, and what you do is you lift them up, and they were incredibly heavy. I think they were at least like 100 or so pounds each. And you'd have to twirl them around your entire body. And he could do that. He was an incredibly fit individual. And so he would challenge other wrestlers to come up and try to do that. There would be this huge heat because anyone who would try, big Americans, because back in the day, there was a lot more like Russia versus you. Like there was a lot of this cultural like kind of push around. And that's, I think, how they fueled that on television, it was fun. It'd be like, oh, American guy's got to come up and beat the Persian guy, So they'd come up, they'd get these clubs, and next thing you know, they can't swirl. And it's an amazing feat. And I know that they actually put that into their circuses, Russian and Persian circuses. They'd have the Persian club twirler. And seriously, if you haven't seen it before, it's an amazing feat of athleticism. Super fun to watch.
Yeah. That's probably where these physical feats awed so many people, because they couldn't do it. And then going back then to the early 1900s circuses, and then even evolved from there. So going back to the early 1800s, to where there was a French gymnast and strongman, similar to a certain extent to like the Persians. It was actually a gymnasium in Brussels in the 1840s, which then started to mark the shift towards gym concepts, actually building on these feats, on what these people were trying to do. I would assume there would probably been things even before that. You could almost theorize it could even been dated back way further than that, because a person, just to create that thought process as evolution has brought us through, I'm sure has come across at a certain part of culture in different parts of the world, but at least this is what we potentially know thus far. And then you fast forward to even the early 19th century on how certain different gym equipment, even from Dr. Gustav Zander, created these machines for physical training. And that's where you then see people actually trying to enhance the traits for the benefit of, for that, the wars, but then just any manual labor. Then you get to the 1970s, 80s, where there was a huge fitness boom. There's different health clubs moving from overseas, Eastern Asia, Japan, China, whatnot, all coalescing in America. And that's where you then see these workout fitness classes, like a bunch of different things take place to build up just aerobic classes. And a lot of it was dated back to like just aerobic conditioning, exercising for endurance. And then as things evolved, and even back in the 60s, 70s, and even before that in World War II, Russia put a lot of energy and focus into building up the Olympics and the athletes from there. And that's where you get these different models, and where most of the research from that got taken into consideration, whether it's trained for power, certain areas of performance. And just though that research kicked boom us even to the 20th century and 21st century. So that's where now, accelerate time, COVID happened and everything got brought from going into a place to now everything online. I think that changed the industry moving forward to where now, yes, you want a community aspect, you want to go someplace and work out and get physically fit, but that opens up the possibility for doing that at home and through online classes as well. We're in this weird transition to where there's more options available, more knowledge and resources on what our bodies are able to go through and how we're able to adapt. There's different records being set on a yearly basis moving forward. So when we look at how true hunters and gatherers evolved way back when, to a drastic increase of evolution, to where we're at in society and how our environment has changed as a whole moving forward, it almost puts us in boxes. So our genetics mainly aren't able to just go and work out an hour and then live the rest of your life. Like, we and our genetics were made to move, exercise throughout a 24-hour time period. Maybe it's 10 hours at a time. and then factor in sleep, relaxation, work. So you can look at training in a 24-hour time scale, not just in a 1-hour stint. So how you're able to train your whole system, knowing that, can you spread that out throughout your day? Are you able to target certain areas in different parts of the day? That will give you a better understanding of what your body's able to go through, but also to make those changes for betterment of you, of a human person, you and your family moving forward from there.
I would only expect that when thousands of years ago, they were training for skill sets. So the hunters were training maybe speed to chase down animals. They were training power to throw spears. They were training not maybe the way that we would typically today think about training, because a lot of people just use training to not only look good aesthetically, but help mental wise. They weren't training because they felt like they needed to help their mental health. And maybe it did that indirectly, but that wasn't the goal. It was to survive. And again, their day to day looked a lot different than maybe today's day to day. They still had their other tasks that they needed to get done, shelter wise, building, foraging, gathering, all that. Yes, they took their time to not maybe train for hypertrophy, to get large and jacked and just want to be aesthetically pleasing. They took their time to build their skill set, train speed, power, and effectiveness of their craft, because that was what was needed to be important. And so now you fast forward to life starts to get easier. But, now what else can you do with your day? And I think that's when someone started to put time and effort into maybe growing themselves, and then that got somewhat caught on. And I know the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, if you haven't seen it, there's right in the beginning, they show bodybuilders in the 1920s. And they're just very large individuals. They have some mass, but if you were to take a look at Arnold in his peak versus these people in their peak, you'd think these are bodybuilders. But back in the day, these people I haven't even seen people like this before. They were the peak athletic, but they were being looked upon as this entirely just incredibly huge built person. And through competition, now you get to Arnold. Fast forward in the 20s, now you're getting C-Bum, and you're getting these just other ginormous, huge individuals. And so it's just through that evolution that we've now come upon to why we look the way that we do. But that came from boredom, I feel like.
Oh, God. Yes.
Which is funny to think about.
Mm-hmm. Or just being obsessed with the process and what are the small details.
Yeah.
So you look from, going back to the point that I want to add in as well, the Olympians back in like the ancient Greeks, they were trained just to survive in the gauntlet itself. Yeah. And then going back to the point that you made, from people, bodybuilders, to now even any sports specific individuals, like they're ahead of their craft throughout the whole world. There's different body types that can come from that, depending on the demand placed on their body over time.
Yep.
And that's where we're seeing everything be very more specific on terms of how you can train, but not to go specific just into one sport or one endeavor, but to have a broad spectrum of skills to help influence whatever target goal that you want now.
And we're going to get to efficiency when we get into the apps in a little bit, because I do think people are starting to feel like they have less time to work out, which you and I will argue that there's always time for those kinds of things, especially if you prioritize that. But
yes,
we will always meet you where you're at. But before we get into the efficiency part of it, you still have to prepare and understand, how am I going to fit this into my life? And first off, you should want to fit this into your life. But if you're having a problem, struggling, how are we going to fit this into our life? Doc, we talk all the time about optimizing our schedules and those kinds of things. But first and foremost, for those jumping into fitness, what do they need first as a mindset to get started?
Good point. First off, you have to make a priority that this is going to be good for your health, and not only mentally, but physically moving forward.
Yep.
And so if you are taking care of a family, you have a bunch of kids, and you just feel like you're overwhelmed, are you able to do something during any small pits of time, or work with your family but schedule it, time block, create a consistency of habits, things that you want to do. Firstly, it goes back to self-aware. What are you currently doing, and where can you make changes? And then start with one time slot, one small thing that you want to change at a time. Build on it, keep it consistent for weeks on end, and then maybe add a second one. First thing, self-awareness. Second thing, track, understand what is one thing you want to add in. If it is physical fitness, which we need,
Yes.
are you able to add that in on a consistent basis at a period of time? Are you able to do that with maybe not just yourself, but your friends, family that you know,
Yep.
and then grow upon it from there? So it's definitely creating habits, consistency, and making time for what you want.
For sure.
Yeah, Doc.
And the only thing I would add to that is if you are having a hard time bringing yourself to the gym consistently or frequently, I would ask you to take a step back and treat it as a 10-year process. For some people that think that they're losing in the micro, they get so caught up in the micro that they become overwhelmed and they quit because they're thinking, I only made it to the gym twice this week. I know all these influencers are going like 6 times a week. There's no point. Why would I even try for that if I'm not going to?
8-ball.
Yeah. First and foremost, you're not going to look like that influencer. So get that out of your head. If you want to, then you need to change your priorities because they are training very often, very intensely, pretty much all the time. So stop letting that get to your mindset because you can still look good, stay in shape, feel good at a consistent basis with not that much effort. For us, when we speak like that, it really is like there's so much more that we feel like we could probably be doing. And we're also looking ahead to what other people are doing. And we're like, man, we wish we should be doing that. But then people under us are like, oh, I wish we should be doing that. But take a step back and think, okay, even if you want to do 10 years, be like a year, be like, okay, by the end of the year, I want to be working out 5 days a week. Perfect. Month 1, practice going once or twice a week and be okay with it. Month 2, can you get to 3? Do you have to plateau for a while and then get to 4? By end of the year, you're at 5. You just completed your goal. You stuck to your own self, and now you built that habit. And I would encourage you to have that mindset of it's not going to be, okay, I need to be in the gym 5 days a week. And after 2 months, if I haven't got there yet, then it's a failure. It's just not true. But there is some points of consistency that I think you should focus on. And I'm going to leave you with a quote, which is Hormozy. He talks a lot about this. And I don't know if it was Hormozy, but it was the podcast with Chris Williamson and Hormozy. And Chris had brought this up to Hormozy, and he said, when you don't show up once, it's a mistake. When you don't show up twice, it's a habit. And so I'm going to leave you with that. You don't have to go to the gym every single day. But if you're not showing up at least every other day, if not every day, meaning you're still working on yourself. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour weightlifting session. It talks so much about the little things that you can even do at your desk every day to work on yourself. That's the routine you should be building. If you give yourself a good 10 years of that, you're going to be a totally different person.
100%.
That's how I think you should treat fitness. It's how can you get 1% better every single day, but don't quit. Because that second time, it's now a habit and you got to redo it.
And even to the point that Doc made, okay, you made it consistently 5 days a week, a year, and that may not be just going to the gym, but maybe going for a walk every single day, or taking or playing with your dog outside, and just moving your body on a consistent basis. Like it could be something simple like that, but once you get to a point or a goal, but to keep moving past it and to add on to that. So you get to 5 days a week working out, running, what have you with that. For that next year or for that next quarter or month, are you able to stay consistent with that? Is there something that you want to add on, but to stay with that consistency to keep me moving forward? And then maybe a decade goes by and you're making small tweaks, potentially an injury happened. Are you able to come back from that? Maybe your goals have changed, shifted, but the time allowed and allocated for the fitness shouldn't change.
No.
It's using that time for moving your body, adapting, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can go about it.
Yes, and that's what we're about to get into.
Mhm.
So Doc, what are some maybe more unique ways that people can get into moving their bodies other than just the gym?
Yes, because anytime when someone hears physical fitness, exercise, and they all almost always think gym.
Yep.
They think, okay, what's gym membership cost? Oh, it's always so busy that I just can't do what I want to do, and I just get frustrated and leave. There's a bunch of different things that you can do. Now with technology come to the forefront, you can do online classes.
Yep.
You can do like Pilates. You can do anything. Just even on YouTube itself, you can find a bunch of different resources.
For free.
Oh, for free,
Yep.
yes. From people that have like done these things, whether it's martial arts, whether it's working out, whether it's different aspects of just even running, or you can learn different skills, and there's the education portion as well. So a lot of the resources are made available to you. Now it's just the time, learning, and then just being curious. I think that's another important part. There's different things that you can do to go participate in your community, whether it's athletics in all ages, quite frankly. And then, or even just going out and enjoying different types of games, learning something new, go rock climbing, go hiking, go snowshoeing for that matter. Just something that'll challenge your body, maybe create a sweat, but it's something that anytime things are challenging, it's forcing your body to adapt and change.
Yep.
So you have to lean into those tough times that if you wake up, the only time you have allocated is in the morning. It's getting out of bed and just going to do that effort. Obviously, being smart about it will work better, but that's going to be very important. And then there's other things in terms of maybe laborious jobs that you either volunteer for or being mindful of certain activities. For example, let's say, guys, one thing that comes to my mind right now is working on a farm that you have to move hay or you have to shovel off the side of the road. Can you do that task and try to create a workout with it?
Yeah.
I always loved when I was living in Minnesota and North Dakota shoveling. It was like my time for workouts. So I tried to shovel snow a different way. I tried to push, pull the shovel, had fun with it, play with the pups in the snow at the same time. And that itself was my workout.
Yep.
It's like all these small things that your body goes so you can create a workout of it and have fun with it.
And that's so funny that you brought that up because that's exactly what I did yesterday. So
Oh, nice.
my girlfriend and I went for a hike. That itself is a workout.
Yes.
But it was supposed to be my leg day that day. So I turned that into my leg day. And so I focused on my glutes and my calves. So when I was going up the mountain, I was focusing on trying to get my foot as high as I could up on these rocks. And then I would explode like a step up.
Yep.
And that's all I'd focus on is which rocks were high enough to where I could get my foot high enough and I was exploding. I try to focus on both glutes so that we're even. And that's what I did on the way up. On the way down, I would plant my foot and then slowly eccentrically load my calf. And I just kept doing that to warm up or get my calves going. And there was my workout. I could have done way more in the gym myself, but I was graceful with myself and I chose to have that as be my workout. But you don't have to be in the gym. Like you said, you can make fun with it. And to be honest, that was one of my favorite workouts that I've done this week, not having to do leg days. And I still got a good workout. But I think that's where a lot of people fear that they have to get to. And you can definitely be more creative with your workouts. And you don't always have to do what everyone else is doing. And I think there's more to be said about the people that are just doing maybe more meditative things, yoga, Pilates, all the things that aren't the gym, because there's still definitely a growth to be made with a lot of those activities.
Absolutely. And I know Doc touched on an important part to make fun of the challenges that you're having, just create a workout in the activity that you're doing. And there's different properties, not only just exploding, but like there's a bunch of different things that you can do and train just in different circumstances.
Yep.
Obviously, those are brief examples, but have fun with it, make fun of the situation that you have. So really good point on that one, Doc.
Yep.
Now I love how you prepared a few different recommendations for some fitness apps, for just some technology, because I think as we're in this time frame to where everything can be online, but also things can be in person, whether it's gyms, trainers. There's a bunch of different variability. So, Doc, what have you found with some of the fitness apps that people can potentially look into?
Absolutely.
And we're not sponsored by any of these, by the way.
And I wish I could have brought more, because
Mm.
you're about to see just the amount of craziness with fitness apps nowadays. So there are literally thousands of fitness apps on the market today. In COVID time, this was from 2020 to 2023, there was about a $1.1 billion valuation change as far as fitness apps go. It's projected to be 15 billion by 2028. That's just in 5 years. 15x. With that comes, how do you sort through the ones that are helpful maybe and some that are maybe not as helpful? I'm always excited to push towards the ones that are more AI focused, because when you can use AI as a tool to not have to do so much extra work, that's where I feel you're going to gain extra time, which is, I know what the whole point of all this is, gaining you so much more time so you can do the things that are important in your life. Fitness should be one. So the first one is Carbon, and this was created by Dr. Lane Norton. I believe he's a PhD, and he's been on a lot of pods talking just about, he's very science driven when it comes to nutrients and food and even exercise. He's a power lifter, and so I know that he's very well read on those kinds of things. So I'm sure he's done research on all of that as well. But Carbon, I've used this before. It works super well at taking the information that you give it, but then continuing to monitor your progress and make changes for you as if you were working with a trainer anyway. So the way that it works is, ultimately, it's a smart macro approach. And so this is more of a nutrition than it is a fitness, but still very important. So basically, as you continue to adjust your calorie, your macronutrient intake, it will then take your personal data like weight, your activity level, your fitness goals, and then obviously it creates a plan for you, just like most simple ones do. But the gain is the adaptive technology that it has. So it adjusts nutrition targets each week for you. If your weight isn't changing as expected, it recalculates your macros to align with your goals, which obviously, if you're maybe not gaining weight, it then adds on macros already for you and says, hey, guess what? This is what you need to do. And it's just constantly changing. If you're gaining too much, or maybe you're losing, it changes those kinds of things. But it's very evidence-based, which I know you and I are super behind. So my guess is the way that it would be evidence-based is the food that it chooses for you to eat comes from a place of science. I believe also the way that you are given the plans are given in a way that's maybe less fad diet-like, more science-backed, which is helpful too, because that's usually where you're going to get results. It does have some flexible dieting thrown in there where no foods are restricted as long as they fit your macro targets. This approach contrasts with restrictive diets, making it more sustainable long-term. So most diets that try to gain a huge outcome within a short period of time, we've talked about that, sustainable. So this takes this in a way to, it works with you with your goals, but it also allows you to be flexible and then makes changes along the way. If you're not getting to where you want to be, it makes the changes on go. There's customizations for all levels. So there's a beginner to even advanced athlete, which then provides just a variety of levels. The way that it works is you set your goals, tracks your macros, you weigh yourself weekly, and then it begins to determine if you're on track or not. Reviews your progress, and then adjustments for plateauing if you need to. If you feel like you are someone that can do maybe some things by yourself, you're smart enough to maybe jump into something like that, it's a great place to get great information from a trusted source, almost as if they're a trainer themselves, as long as you're not paying. Some nutritionists, coaches are hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. This, I think, is $30 a month. So that's where the advantage would be. And that's where I think it'd be a good place to learn too. It can teach you, I'm sure, plenty of things as you're learning along.
I love this. And yes, I know we're talking about exercise gyms and whatnot. If you're trying to lose weight, all the success will come in the kitchen instead of the gym more times than not for most people. So understanding different aspects of the training whether it's food coming in, rest, recovery, different other therapies. It all matters for the maintenance long term. So
Yep.
I'm glad that you put this. And then Leighton Orn, he's incredibly smart, and he looks at different perspectives, not only from the scientific literature, but also from experience that he's
Yeah.
worked with clients. And then to create such a system that will change and adapt, you don't see that too often.
No.
Which
And
I like you brought that
and
up.
some of the apps that are created by influencers are done of extension of their brand.
Yes.
And so they spend more time on just maybe the experience look of it versus actually buckling down, doing the work to make it effective.
Yes.
Anybody can put up some workout videos and make you pay for it. Go to YouTube for those.
Yes.
This is something that will truly be a game changer for yourself if you feel you aren't as experienced in that stage.
I love that. So Doc, I know you brought up another one, Juggernaut AI. What have you found with that, and how does that work?
So I haven't used this, but I know a lot of people who do use this, and I've read a lot about it. I know that it's a little bit for more experienced individuals, but I do think it does have a beginner phase for you.
Cool.
If you are just starting out, I think some YouTube videos is just as easy. You don't want to invest, but this is cool because what it does is it assesses your strength levels first and foremost, then your exercise preferences and your training preferences. So it collects like max lift of all your exercises. It makes sure to gauge like where you are in your fitness journey from the start. Then it monitors and tracks all of that for you, and it creates you a program. So there's a periodization to the program, which I really like, because instead of you having to remember and create your own, and knowing that with hypertrophy, there's plateau when you don't change either reps, sets, different weight intensities, all of those things. It does all of this for you to optimize your results.
And periodization is a large game plan of where you need to go, ups and downs, rest, recovery for a set period of time, usually on a month basis or a yearly basis.
Yep. Thank you. And what's important about that is, one, it takes the guesswork out for you because it uses helpful algorithmic data to set that all up for you. And then two, I'm going to get into this in just a little bit, it makes real-time adjustments based on feedback you give it. So if a workout is too easy or too difficult, you let the app know that. And then, of course, it makes changes accordingly. But the last thing that I think, the thing that's been missing from most apps, Doc, and I know you'll agree with me, it tracks recovery, fatigue, and overall progress to tweak your plan in real time. I'll jump down to that. The periodization and peaking programs, and then recovery and fatigue tracking. So, for example, your workload has been maybe higher and you're either feeling like you're sore, maybe you had an injury. You then can let them know that. It then changes the plans accordingly to help you during that stage of time. Not only that, you are given a number, which is fatigue level, and it tracks this number throughout. So it knows, okay, this workout you left feeling this way versus the workout we just gave you left feeling this way. So it uses AI to basically throw only the workouts that are positive versus more negative. And then it just weeds out the things that maybe you especially even if you don't like to do. So it's almost like Spotify for good music. It's okay, I like this, instead of this song, it's this exercise. Like it, they'll throw it into your next program so you have it, and the next thing, you're just building this without having to actually put in the work.
Fascinating. I've never heard of a company do that before. And again, we're not sponsored by any of this, but it's sounding like this is a really good program for a lot of people because it's able to change and adapt.
And then we love data. So the last thing that I think is the most fun is it tracks your progress and it gives you performance trends and graphs. So if you were able to, because it'll redo maxes. And so I think when you complete a max, it shows that to you as, hey, that was a PR, by the way. Good job. So you're always being shown how you're trending progress wise, which is so important because people need to know they're moving forward, especially when a plateau hits. So this is objective data to show you like, hey, I know you've been feeling a certain way. Maybe the lifts haven't been as good, but look at your progress. A great way to continue to keep you feeling great about yourself and your progress.
Do you know with this Juggernaut AI, does it also add in like different workouts of either swimming or rowing, or is it just like lifts?
I don't know about that personally, but I do know the types of workouts are in the thousands.
Okay.
So I bet you you can explain it to a certain way.
Mhm.
And whether that is stating that you went and did cardio for this amount of time and just put swimming, it'll then say that. There's a lot of customability to it. When I get to, I'm getting very close, but I would love to, my next app, I would love to use this. I want to see if I can.
Or maybe these are the resources I have available. Are there certain things I can utilize this with?
Yep.
Which would make sense, because if AI is taking all that into consideration, it would make sense that they would add in workouts specifically designed around those.
Yep. This is also for individuals who don't want to maybe meet in person with a trainer. Maybe this is just something they want to do at home. I don't know, what have you. That's would be maybe benefits of that.
So, Doc, going a little different side of things, left field. Now, let's say that someone finds that they're more motivated to do some of this exercise when they are around people, maybe not complete friends, family, but just in a group setting. What have you found, or what are some of the other possibilities that people can utilize?
Yes. And so I came up with 8 completely different types of workouts, places that you could go to, and all of them will give you certain benefits to your physical fitness, other than maybe some others. Some more maybe mental health, flexibility, mobility, versus maybe strength, versus maybe cardio. You'll always want to make sure that you're working to have more of an all-around health focus too, but cross all the boxes off. And that's where it's, if you really don't have time, go to this place because it crosses all your boxes off, and then you don't have to worry about it. Orange Theory, I think, is a common one that most people know about. It's a high intensity interval training that is a class base. I'm sure there's plenty throughout Arizona. The next one is F45 training, which is more of a circuit based. I think a few of our patients go to F45. They like it because, again, it takes the guesswork out. They come, they do their workouts, they leave, and it's all set up for them, which I think is super helpful for, again, if you're busy. Bar workouts, those are more, I would say, movement specific. And so maybe more ballet, yoga, and even a little bit of Pilates thrown in. It's a more lower impact, high intensity, but I don't know too much about it. But what I do know is for those that just do not want to lift weights and they're interested in that, this is maybe more meaningful, moving their body mobility wise, and they're able to have a bit of experience with it versus just going in, crushing reps and leaving. And then of course the community part of it.
And if someone, like you're a weightlifter, or you're just even specialize in certain sports, I would suggest to try all these, because they'll bring out some of the weaknesses that you may have and help strengthen those and help a little bit better of a foundation to move upon. Like Doc said, each one of these has a different adaptation opposed to it. So if you try new things, maybe your body is very sore. Like when I was playing college soccer, we had ballet instructor come in, and I have never been sore of a workout than from ballet. It's weird to say, but oh my gosh, it helps improve a lot of other aspects that weren't really trained upon, that we didn't know on. But if you're just a fitness person that just wants to exercise, feel physically fit, feel healthy, try a bunch of different things. It'll open your eyes up to certain things that you might enjoy or do really well.
And I'm glad you brought that up for a couple reasons. One, we're about to get to something that I think will be helpful for those who are interested in trying everything. And then number 2, I have played around with a few of these and found the same exact thing. But when I was doing hot yoga, did not realize how not flexible I was, and how when I improved my flexibility, my strength actually improved. And I'm sure you can get into the physiology of them when it comes to the muscle. That was super important for me. CrossFit was also another, I guess, underlying awareness of how poor my HIIT cardio is. Like I could go for a long endurance run anytime. That wasn't it, but it was this higher intensity, short period of time, maybe sprint, like my short burst. I was burned out. There's no way. And I used to play basketball. I could sprint up and down that court. And to see that I lost a lot of that ever since I got to high school was concerning, was very concerning.
And even with CrossFit specifically, and this can bleed into any of these other ones, that not only tests your body, but also mentally your mind. And it has a community aspect to it. So as a whole there's physical adaptations, but mental that they can change as well. So,
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. CrossFit, we just hit on that a little bit. Core power yoga, again, yoga studios. Some of them, if you're going to do it, I would recommend hot yoga. I feel like that is a better push of a workout, especially with the metabolism portion of things too. If you're looking to lose a little bit of weight, it's no real extra effort. It's just bearing the heat.
And with that too, if you're overweight, maybe do what your body's able to do.
Yeah.
It's certain small movements. And then if you feel like you're gassed, maybe just hang on there. If you have to take breaks, don't completely kill yourself through the process, but like obviously be smart about it.
How can you do this for 10 years? That's got to be the mindset. I know you want the results. We all want the results. We all want to look like that influencer you just saw on your Instagram the other day. But if you knew what they went through to get to how they looked, you'd have so much more perspective of, okay, I'm silly for even thinking that I can get there in 2 months. So you got to have some perspective of that.
Love it.
Boot body camps, again, those are just conditioning group workouts. I know one of them, I think, which one is it? Barry's boot camp. That's a very popular one, I think, in Arizona. Again, just high intensity strength training. I think there's maybe more lifting weights with those two. So if you maybe want a little bit more of a push. And then Pilates. My girlfriend does Pilates. She said it's the hardest workout you'll ever do. And what's funny is I have yet to go. I'm scared.
It's tough.
She's tougher than me. There's no way. But the U.S. Olympic men's soccer team was videoed doing a Pilates session. And there was at one point, I think 15 minutes in, one of their strikers, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, but they got to have some big legs to score, kick hard, his leg was shaking coming down on one of the moves. And they had said they had never experienced a workout like that before.
That's exactly how I felt doing ballet. It works tissues you never would have thought, and then it enhances the ones that are maybe overused. Like, it was the most intense workout I've ever been through my entire life, and it's weird to say, but very humbling experience.
And so when I build up enough courage to go, I definitely would like to try Pilates too. It uses certain high-tech machines that actually allow you to push harder, but also have some resistance with it too. There's some pulley mechanisms to it. Great incorporation of technology with that sport is great. I didn't add this at the end, but jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
We've talked about that. I don't know how many times. I didn't add that in, but now that I think about it, we did talk about that with Matt on last podcast, obviously with Corey too. So the reason why I was excited you brought that up, Doc, was there is an app that I've used before that I don't think a lot of people know about called ClassPass. It is a app that takes all of these studios in your location and they become the middle guy for a membership.
Smart.
So you pay them a monthly and then they give you credits, and then each place takes a certain amount of credits for a session. So let's say you're given 50 credits for the month. You pay, it really wasn't much, anywhere from like 20 to $100 a month. You can range how many credits you want. And then let's say for my hot yoga thing was like 3 credits. So I could do so many in a month if I wanted to. Like a Pilates one would probably be maybe 12 to 15. It'd probably be a little bit more of your credits. But you can take and be like, okay, I want to do a CrossFit that day. Oh, I want to do, and next thing you're able to go and do all of these. The cool thing about ClassPass too, though, is there are other services like wellness, like massage and spa and IV and chiro that are on this app too. So when you're sore from doing all these these classes, you can then use your credits to go get massage and other things too, which I think is perfect.
And I'm sure that's not available for every single place in like for us.
You'll just have to log on and see. Most bigger cities, I would assume, has something like that, but you'll have to check. Yeah,
that's so cool. I've never even looked at stuff like that before. I know there's some community groups, if we will, like on Facebook, and you can ask questions there.
Yep.
But that's cool.
Yes.
Okay, so Doc, let's dive into gyms specifically. I guess, what are some of the things that you look at when you want to either purchase a membership for gyms, or what are certain specifics that you look for investing your time, money, and energy?
yes, I may be a little biased in this opinion, but the reason I'm saying it, Doc, I think I want to hear your 2 cents on it
Cool.
too. But when you are ready to step up to maybe more of a next level, pushing yourself, you're looking to change the way you look to maybe a much more muscular, much more fit. A gym is going to give you all the tools that you need versus at home, you may not have all the weights, you may not have all the equipment, and it'll be a little tougher to get there. Not to say you couldn't, but if we're talking efficiency and time and priority and all those kinds of things, you put an hour into a gym that has everything, you can get it done. So first and foremost, it's going to have better equipment. It's going to have all the machines, weights, tools that you need that are hard to keep at home.
And these are most gyms. There's some gyms that might not have certain specific parts to this, but if you go to any large franchisee that is available in most states, larger ones, you're going to get a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So if you are looking for that next edge, getting comfortable enough to get into the gym is going to be a place to get started. Now, before I even get onto that, go and do stuff on your own for a year. Get comfortable with yourself, and then you can go into a gym. You don't have to pump yourself up right away. I remember when I was first starting to get into it, I did just 100 push-ups a day for 8 months. That's it. And some squats, so I didn't look like I skipped like it. That's all I did. And then I started to see some definition show. I was getting stronger, and I felt, okay, I think I'm ready for the next step. And so that's when I was like 21 or 2, that's when I started getting into the gym. And there's still sometimes I walk by a guy in the gym and I'm like, that guy is ginormous. And I'm looking at myself and there's some comparison going on. Trust me, the gym culture, some of those gyms maybe aren't but most of those people in there are looking to help you and are excited that you're there. And if you go into that and you're a little more fearful, trust me, they're in their own bubble. They're there to, just like you, to cram out some reps and then go home. But you'd be surprised at the people you talk to in those gyms. They're excited to meet you too. And I've talked to some interesting individuals. It's not as fearful as it should be. And if it is, then find another gym. But anyway, it's a focused environment designed for working out without the distractions of home. Again, focus, everyone's in there. They're trying to get through their sets, their reps with every bit of equipment that they can, as long as the gym isn't packed, of course. If you need to, most big gyms have trainers, which and this is now the time to talk on maybe the app versus the trainer. With a trainer, I think you might get better results versus an app. App can only do so much. There's also a part of the human experience. Experience is the big word. The app doesn't really have experience. It just has data.
And accountability.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough to have maybe a voice tell you what to do versus a human interaction. There's just something different about it. And then, of course, just everything that trainers have in their capabilities, such as injury prevention, knowing how to lift properly. It's easy to look at a YouTube video and try to mimic how the lift should look, but the trainers can walk you through it, make it seamless, usually more effective in that case.
When touching on trainers too, and I might be a little biased, but when looking at many different types of programs, certifications that a typical trainer would go through, there are certain top tier certifications that you want to look for, which I'll touch on in one sec here. But there's also just, for most people, for most states, for most gyms, they need to have the trainer, whoever works with an individual, to have either one, experience, a little bit of experience at the very least, or two, a foundation of like how to do some of the workouts, like the movements, but have a general understanding of maintaining and monitoring the person that you're working with as well. Now, in terms of if you want to find the best trainer, personally, based on like evidence-based research, I would strongly suggest to find someone who has done work with functional range conditioning. They look at a systematic approach, scientifically backed, to where they're able to target specific tissues and certain structures that will help not only for the maintenance of the body, but also the long-term aspect. And if you want any resources, Corey Brown, who was on a few podcasts ago, he's certified. Strongly suggest if you're in the Arizona area, reach out to him. Huge shout out to Corey. He's very knowledgeable. And any individuals that use the functional range conditioning certification, they often have a lot more knowledge, especially if they use it on a consistent basis, specifically just that certification, actually have better results than even, you'll be surprised, some physical therapists that actually are doctorates in this field because of how specific that is. So
Yep.
functional range conditioning, huge shout out, not sponsored. I am certified myself, but it is for a specific reason. And I've looked at many different other certifications, trained athletes, and then even looking at from the rehab side, that program has a lot of it built in.
And Doc's not just saying that to plug. There are NFL athletes that we have treated because that's just how effective this protocol is. And when we really get down to it, those that truly need the nth degree of detail when it comes to tissue targeting, tissue change, that is what's going to get you there. And to think that you could get there with this kind of training, because I think to get started, I don't know, it's entry level. You can jump in and pay for the program. You don't have to have much.
Agreed.
Is there any, I guess, barrier to get that started?
I think some of the courses start at $800,000 or so, but it's well worth it. And if you go for a weekend for the certification, they provide you a lot of resources and tools a week prior leading into it. And it's very deep. It'll challenge on how you look at the body from not only just, we're targeting chest today. Are you targeting also the joints involved with the overlying muscles that attach to the shoulder from the chest?
Yes.
Are they looking at the tendinous and ligament properties to where if you overpower and if your muscles are too strong in comparison to the soft tissue of the ligaments and tendons, that can overpower and create injury. So there's way more specificity to it.
What I've seen come from Doc's brain, being able to have that background. And of course, Doc's different. He's also a doctor of chiropractic. So talk about an extra 4 years of what we were trained as providers, but at least it gives you the start to think differently. And I think that's where Doc shines. It's you have your average skill sets of any position. And then it's, how do I get to that next level? And truly, I've learned so much just from the philosophy that you have when it comes to FRC. And I now have incorporated into how I speak about that with my patients. And it's helped build almost a foundation, which is nice, because not a lot of times you're given all of this info, but you're never given a great way to use it. And I had all that information in my brain, but I never was given a foundation on how to use it. And that was what was most helpful for me. It's okay. Right away, you look at joints, and then you think here, and then you think here, and then next thing you know, it's a process, it's a system, and it's so easy to utilize.
And then thank you for bringing that up, and appreciate your kind words. And not only from that chiropractic rehab standpoint, but even from like training athletes. And so you can see that rehab training is very similar, just changes based on spectrum of either injuries or development of where you want to go. So that's, if you have a general understanding of how the body works and know different modalities that can influence different aspects or traits of your body, physically, mentally, emotionally, you can start pulling on different triggers, because you can work on a lot of different stuff throughout the body, and you can incorporate that through your everyday life. So for example, what I mean by that is, let's say I always do chest, back, legs. How often do you specifically work on your wrist or your wrist extensors or that specific tissue on the outside portion of the back of your wrist, forearm? If you don't work on these small areas and be very specific to your training, injuries are more inevitably going to be coming down the road. But it's being specific, and it's working on different things to keep you and your body moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next one would be group classes and community. Again, gyms have even the classes in them if you wanted to be more, I guess, efficient with your money. Instead of spending money on all of these other places, you could be at a gym that has all these classes for you too, along with the floor of weights and everything else you can go into. I know some even have basketball courts, and they have pickleball courts, and you name it. Yeah, absolutely. Number 5, more motivation. Simply going to the gym. And motivation, it doesn't always have to be from other people, but I like this too, because I think this is what keeps me accountable, is it's a routine.
Point.
Gets me out of the house. House for me is my like relaxed serenity zone. So it's tough for me when I enter my house to want to leave it. And so when I come home and I've worked my butt off, I've had a great day, I come home, I'm ready to instantly I'm like, ooh. So for me, the gym is a way to keep the scenario changing, but as long as I have that routine built in, my mindset isn't here yet. I keep it elevated until I get home. So those of you that are having troubles getting to the gym, I recommend, if that's similar to you, from work to gym, then home, versus home then gym. It's tough to then once you're there to get back. I don't know if you have the same experience, Doc.
That's really smart. And if you find gyms, I know in Arizona, EOS has some of them have a childcare program built into the same building. So you get home from work, you maybe pick your kids up. Maybe they, as you're working out, they go to this child care portion or
I know
aspect
it's a big activity center, I think. They just do a bunch of activities with them. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, there's that stuff, but yeah, it's creating that into your system is really smart.
Absolutely.
And then we can touch on some of the home gyms here in a second after we get through some of this stuff, because I have a couple key points on that one. But yeah, Doc, so do you have for gym specifics?
So number 6, variety of workouts. Again, you're going to be able to have more equipment, more classes. I think we touched on that already. Ideal for big goals. Again, this is really where, again, if you want some serious goals like bodybuilding, even going for competition, you're going to need a gym. Yeah. I don't know if there's any way around it. And then lastly, recovery tools, which I think is important. Just like we talked about with ClassPass, having that ability to go to maybe massage and what have you. Gyms, some have saunas, steam rooms, recovery areas. I know gyms that do cold plunges now. They do infrared saunas, you name it. So you have all that. Just as important as the working out. Doc, I know we've talked about this, is recovery, injury prevention, making sure you can do this for 10 years.
Yeah, and that's where if you're going to see any gains, it's going to be coming specifically from the rehab, sleep, outside of doing work. Because like anytime you're working out, you're breaking down tissues so your body can send resources to build them up. And that's when you need that signaling, which then comes from the sleep, the rest, the sauna to create the adaptation, cold plunge, like all these different things will elicit different reactions throughout your body. Yeah. And I know we did a whole podcast on sleep and some of the areas of recovery. So go back to some of those videos from there. But yeah, Doc, obviously recovery is super important.
Yeah. So for those of you that have never been in the gym or just maybe don't have an understanding about the gym, there is etiquette to the gym. And Doc, I know there's some do's, there's some don'ts, but it's all about efficiency too. And I think if more people understand that too, it helps everyone out as far as the culture goes, the community goes. So Doc, what are some do's, some don'ts of just gym etiquette?
Yes, and this is from my perspective, and Doc, I love your thoughts. I personally have a home gym, but I've recently purchased a subscription for an outside gym.
Nice.
And I'll get to a few things after a bit, after the do's and don'ts. So proper gym etiquette, especially during busy times. The do's, potentially go ask a person to jump in to a set of whatever equipment they want. So let's say gym is full, you want to work on your backs. Are you able to use the pull down machine? Is someone working at it? Can you ask them, can you jump in a set? So they do efforts, they're resting, relaxing, recovering for the next set. Are you able to hop in, jump in with them at the same time? So efficiency, but it's having the comfortability to ask that question. Hot do, definitely go do. Get out of your own head. And if they say no, cool, there's different ways that you can work out or bypass and come back to there, what have you.
Funny story before I jump in.
Please.
I just had dinner with an individual who brought up, and they're a little older, so it's maybe a different generation gap, but she had asked a younger individual who was on their phone, just waiting, I think, between reps, if they could jump in. And that younger person looked to her like she was asking the most craziest question on earth. And so there might be some gaps now between just culture change. And so I've seen this before is you do the rep, you get on your phone, you wait, and then you do your rep. But for those before phones, the culture was you would just randomly go up to an individual and swap out with them. And that was more normal. Okay. So for those listening that think this is just complete absurdity, trust me, this is how it was done. And it is proper still to swap out if needed, because again, efficiency, time, just being respectful. That's what needs to happen.
Especially if you see that person on a consistent basis, you might make a friend
Yes,
out of
seriously.
it, and then maybe you're going to the gym at the same time, maybe exchanging numbers, and then you have someone to keep you accountable. So it opens up a lot of doors and
Absolutely.
opportunities.
Good
So
point.
very strong do. Asking if you get shut down, that's all right. Maybe don'ts. So do's and don'ts for don't. Maybe being willing and open to maybe one set or one time to allowing someone come in. Just being open to it, I think, is important. So next do is be aware of your surroundings.
Yes.
So important, whether it's moving large weight into the area of what you're trying to do, or what people are around you, either utilizing similar equipment, or are you doing certain activities, exercises that might interfere with people around you.
Yep.
Just being open to the communication, saying, hey, watch out, I might be moving here in a respectful way so it doesn't come off badgering. But yeah, huge on that one. I don't know, Doc, if you have anything on that.
No, that's good. There are some workouts that I'll go into, like most gyms that I go to have a small studio section.
Yeah.
And very rarely are people in there. So I will take more like calisthenic, maybe push-ups and like more body weight stuff, just because I know it's going to be, I call it like my radius. Like it's more of a radius push. So I'll go do those. But then if I have just lifts to do, you can still get that done on a bar or a stand out somewhere else. But again, really, I think what that also means too is be aware that there are other people around you and be respectful of them too. There might be someone that you see that you are infatuated by their muscles. You don't have to make it aware every second, and just be respectful of that too, because some of those individuals actually, and I've talked to them, that they'll purposefully wear larger clothing because they don't want you to feel a certain way around them. James Harrison was one of them. He was the Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker.
Oh, sure.
He said, everyone always asked him, like, they're like, James, why do you wear huge sweatpants and huge crew necks into the gym? And he said, because I fear that people are worried that I look a certain way, and then they feel different because they're like, I don't look like that. I feel, and not to say you have to do that, but that's James being aware of everyone else, respectful, and I found that to be completely selfless.
Love that.
A lot of people step in and they like the show and they want to show everything else.
That's a good example of being completely aware of your surroundings, so much so that you're trying to influence people around you for the betterment of not only them, but yourself too.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
A really good point. Next do I have is be sanitary. And I know, again, we touched on being respectful to people around you. So let's say you're working at a place, a bench, an area. Obviously, clean up after yourself. If there's weights that you use, put them back. Or if someone's waiting, be open and ask them, do you want me to move some of that? Because they might not want to go through the extra work if you've already have a setting that they want available. Again, communication is key. But yeah, be sanitary, either putting your stuff away or even wipe down your area, because your sweat will definitely leave body odor. It can break down the equipment, and it can lead to the environment in which you're invested in to more or less go through tougher times because of your lack of effort.
Yep. And some listen, some don't. It's tough. But for the sanitation too, I always wipe down before I use, and then after. I'm a little more cognizant of that. And then also, there are times where individuals are asking you if you're using equipment. Maybe you're not. So I'm always trying to keep aware of who's doing what, because then next someone might come up to next to me and say, hey, is someone using this bar? And I'll be like, no, actually I haven't seen anybody. And then they can obviously use that too.
Perfect.
So it's just trying to be a part of the community and help each other out.
I love it.
Yep.
Doc, next do we have is be open for others and be open to spot others if they're going through tough effort, or just even ask if someone look like they're struggling, or if they're in the middle of the lift and they just can't get it up, bench press, squat, trying to go and help the others around you, I think is important, especially if they're struggling or you think or they appear like they're in distress. I think naturally as a human, being opened and either communicating before you do that or just go help them itself, especially if an injury could take place.
And I think a part of that etiquette too is knowing your limitations so that other people don't have to bail you out. And
Yes.
and if you're about to do something that you maybe feel you're pushing yourself, get a spotter first.
Yes.
Just so that, number one, we don't want you to end up hurt.
Yep.
And then number two, we would rather have you have assistance than ego lift your way to possibly getting, there's no point.
Yeah.
So, and the last thing I would want is to have to rush over to take a barbell off someone's neck. There's no point for it.
Mm-hmm.
So also that too.
Yeah. And even from top of my mind, like sexual gender difference, let's say a female came up to you and said that she wants a spot while squatting. Well, obviously be respectful if you guys aren't close or if this is someone you just don't know. Don't come right behind them and hold the bar up and then you're touching their behind.
Yeah.
There's common sense to some of this.
I don't know if that happens or not, does it? I don't know, but
it's happened a few times of gyms I've been in.
Yeah.
I look at them thinking, what are they possibly thinking or doing? If that is the case, then maybe people around them, if the person, female or male, felt uncomfortable supporting that individual that just didn't feel comfortable in that setting, the best you possibly can, obviously be respectful all around, but yeah. Now, in terms of don'ts or thereabouts of, sitting on your phone when there's a bunch of people around you and or people are asking to use the same equipment, but you're just sitting on the phone.
For sure. That's got to be number one.
Mm-hmm.
I see it more often.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to get old sometimes, especially when I need a machine.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it goes to the question of being open to have that conversation. Can you split in sets? Because usually they'll break apart. They're like, what is going on? And that can make them a little more aware.
Fortunately, I judge their age because I do know difficulty of the younger generation. If it's a 40-year-old on their phone, I usually have less of an issue going up to them. Sometimes I just don't want the conflict. So I'll just go to a different. But if I'm like stuck and I have nothing, I'm like, everything is taken, then I'll have that conversation.
And I do have sympathy for individuals, especially current teens, 20-year-olds, where the phone has been around you so long that it's almost a part of you.
Yeah.
So if you are utilizing, you might not just be aware of it.
Yeah.
So being open and understanding.
Good point. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
maybe some don't know that they're, that's a good point.
Yeah. So if you're an older individual, obviously you're going to see the trends. Obviously, Doc, you see it too. You just got to be respectful with the communication. If they're still not having it, maybe go talk to a staff worker. Obviously, no one likes to be like a tattletale, but you got to have better use of your time while you're there and feel comfortable in that setting, or even just explain the reason why I'm doing all this. Can I hop in? If not, why not? Or saying this is why I want to do it. So just explain that. But the other don't I have, going back to the sanitary of your area, clean up after your area or not clean up after your area is definitely don't. Clean up after your area, keep proper environment. Don'ts. If people are bothering you that you don't want to be bothered, especially if people are hitting on you, if you're female or male, just having that conversation and being respectful to say, I don't want to talk now. Just having that conversation.
Yep. I agreed. Yeah.
So, Doc, those are the proper etiquettes for busy gyms, do's and don'ts.
I love that.
Now, I do want to add in on this last portion. If you have, let's say, you want to have a home gym, there's a couple awesome principles I've learned throughout the time, because most of the time I usually work at home. For me, it's easier getting home from work, save time from that travel from work to gym and getting ready and getting to the lift to where I can do work at home. If anything, start off small and purchase the weights, purchase things as you grow, if you need to adapt more. Like, for example, I'm trying to gain a bunch of strength and muscle. So I've worked through the weights I have. I need more weights so my body can go under load and stress, and then go and purchase weights. I wouldn't suggest anyone that wants a home gym to just purchase everything at once. Unless
go get
you have
a $30,000 home gym.
Yeah. Unless you have the resource. Cool.
Right.
But grow your home gym as you utilize the resources that you have.
Yep. I love that. And I feel like I've done that as well, where as I've needed to change, I'll get as I go. I got to a point though where I just like the gym itself. I would love to get to a point where I could afford a $30,000 home gym plus recovery center and that'd be great. But no, absolutely. So lastly, Doc, I know we talked to them about some resources and tools that they can look to as far as an upper or a lower workout. how can they access that now?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is after this in the same video, I'm going to be uploading home workouts on upper and a lower body, arms, body, legs, and my explanation and reasoning as I'm currently lifting and working out, so you can see different principles and different things that you can use in either a home workout or even a workout in your gym, and understand the reasons why I go through the process and do what I do. Like, it could be different in terms of hypertrophy training to where you gain more muscle mass. That could be different than power and working on speed, explosion, and that could be different than cardio work of just going out for a run, cycling, rowing. So stay tuned. All right, so for those of you guys that are listening still that cannot see the video, we're switching to me going over a couple different types of workouts. Now, excuse the pups in the background. They're enjoying life right now. Now, as I go through this, I'm not going to complete each exercise till failure or time under tension, just due to me getting through a lot of these different types of exercises and different types of ways that you can think about exercising, whether it's adding some of these in to your workout, whether it's creating a workout just using these, or using some of these into your warm-ups. There's a bunch of different variations. Now, a couple principles we want you to know. We're going to be targeting joints different than ligaments and tendons, different than muscles. And that's broken up into pretty much 3 different areas. With the joints, it's going to be moving the fullest range of motion a joint possibly can, but just focusing on one joint at a time. So that's going to involve stabilizing all the other local areas above and below where that joint is. Next, we're then going to focus on for ligaments and tendons, and this is mixing in through some of these exercises and workouts, which I'll describe as I go through each one on the reason how and why. Now, for ligaments and tendons, those are usually isometric contractions when the tissues / muscles are lengthened. So if those that are listening, if your arm is completely straight and you squeeze your whole arm, most people are going to notice more tension where the joint is or at the end of muscle bellies. So this would be focusing on full length and at length isometric muscle contractions. You can do something similar, but it would be shortening. So bending your elbow, and then it's going to then force and squeeze all the muscles in your arm. You're going to feel that more in the muscle belly. So there's a difference between squeezing your muscles, tissues, at length, depending on what joint you're focusing on. So, bud. And that's what will give you a good idea in terms of what we're targeting. And then for the muscles, that's going to involve concentric, eccentric work, or shortening of the joint and lengthening of the joint, or holding a specific angle and moving for continuous movement in a plane or an area or in space. So we're going to mix in all those different aspects into the training so we can be very specific on what tissue we want to target. Now, to train the system and to train your body, you can go for a large number of reps and sets. Usually that comes, if you're pushing yourself with resistance, that comes in form of hypertrophy. You can move in a dynamic fashion at speed or quicker versus slower, focusing more on power. You can focus on lengthening or slow molding tissues, which involves stretching with isometric contractions or contracting certain muscles as you go through the fullest mobility or fullest range of motion possible. Now, when you first start off with some of these areas that oftentimes get neglected, you have to be cautious about how much intensity you put towards some of these efforts and some of these exercises. Be cautious because you're probably going to feel soreness afterwards, maybe a few days afterwards, which usually is due to delayed onset muscle soreness. It's almost like if you haven't worked out or haven't worked out a specific muscle or tissue in a long time or ever, the body's not going to understand for the small muscles what that pressure and what that damage is to some of those muscles. And it's going to send that signal of achy, dull, sore, tension oftentimes, or it's going to lead to tightness. But if you have certain areas of tightness or you feel like something is either popping, grinding continuously, you have to back off on that increased range of motion or be cautious of even doing that exercise itself unless followed by a trained practitioner that specializes in movement biomechanics that can diagnose and then also help treat. So we're having a general understanding with that. We can either go work effort to failure, to where you can't move anymore, and more or less that's going to send the signal from the brain to tissues to be like, okay, we need to not only heal the tissues but lay down and send signals of hormones, chemicals to the area to rebuild and strengthen that area. Or we can go till we feel a good muscle burn and maybe do a couple sets of it at that pace or that amount of load. Or we can go until we feel nice mobility, working some of the tissues, but not pushing the system too much. And all these can be added in different times of the day, throughout the day. I would suggest to try, if you want to accelerate the results, you have to maximize not only sleep, also recovery. So you can start thinking about, if you want to do 2-a-days, doing the same workout, monitoring the intensity, of course, in the morning or at lunch, and then doing either another set or a couple sets of those same exercises at night. So you're doubling up, you're breaking down the tissues, the body's healing, recovering as you go through the day, and then you hit those tissues again, which also sends another signal to the brain of, okay, we gotta lay down tissue, we gotta open up this joint space, so it can accelerate the results. But then if you're gonna do 2-a-days, you have to make sure you have really good night's sleep, and then that following day, or probably potentially for some of you, a few days afterwards, wait before you target those either same exercises or same tissues in which you worked, especially when starting 2-a-day process from there. So let's start off with these two types of workouts. So the first workout, we're going to be focusing on neck, upper back torso rotation, shoulders, and wrist extensors. Now these are oftentimes neglected, and I'm going to go through targeting joints, generating intensities, so we get the nervous system on board, so we get the joints, which oftentimes are not trained at all, and then we can start laying down tissue in different planes of motion. So you have to pay attention to muscle insertion, origin, or where muscles attach to if you're a practitioner and want to add some of this in and have a general understanding why. But then also, if you don't have that background, you can see why and how we're doing it. So you can add this into your own workout routine yourself. Now the next workout we're going to get into after I follow up with this upper body, neck, arms, wrist workout is going to be legs. It's going to be specifically thigh tissues, a little bit of focus on the feet, and lower back mobility, movement, and strengthening. So that'll be exciting. So stay tuned. If you need to, they are timestamps below. You can fast forward and go from there. When you first start working out, you want to generate energy so you can create effort and actually go through your workout with less risk of injury. Now, usually on how that starts, especially how the nervous system signals to the tissues and the body, and vice versa, body tissues back to the brain. You want to increase that connection, so that's going to involve joint-specific full range of motion movements, and it's also going to involve generating the intensity of your nervous system as well. So what I like to start off with is intensities. Now you can vary the intensities, 100% your max muscle contraction, the max you can squeeze any tissues throughout the body, versus 75% your max squeeze, or 50% or 25%. So starting off, when you first squeeze all the muscles in your body, I want you first start off slower, pay attention, have that mind-body connection, and then ramp up to 100%, squeezing all the muscles in your body. Now, if this hurts a little bit, or if you have any old injuries or any areas that are sensitive from past injuries, pay attention to those. Mind-body connection. Can you generate that contraction up to 100%, or do you have to vary that down? And that can give you a general understanding how hard to push that specific area and what range of motion that you probably want to limit going into, especially for longer periods of time. So we'll start off by generating the intensities. You can do this seated, standing. Ideally, standing works best. Doesn't matter as much in terms of position posture, but we first want to focus on either squeezing the ground, closing our fists, and just start squeezing all the muscles in your body, from your feet to your hands, to your spine, to your core, to your jaw, and then ramping up to 100% for a few seconds, and you can go more, and then slowly backing off on the intensity, ramping up again, slowly backing off. Doing that a good 2 to 3 times. Maybe find a different position, seated in a plank position, and then again trying to squeeze all the tissues from your fingers, hands, toes, quads, core, back, neck, jaw. That will help get the nervous system on board. And then as you squeeze, you can also add this in. Just start focusing, squeezing all the muscles in your body, but start focusing on one area. So for me, I'm focusing on my left shoulder, and then try to get a good understanding. Can you squeeze the muscles in the back of your left shoulder, the front of your left shoulder, as you're keeping everything contracted? And you can go through in different body parts and squeezing and try to focus on the specific area. That will increase proprioception. It will increase how your body connects to your brain and vice versa, which then helps not only performance, recovery, rehab, a lot of different areas. So I like adding that into your workout starting off with. Now let's go into joint specific movement. And if you know how the nervous system signals to the body and body to the brain in terms of tissues connection, if there's any problem with any joint, it's going to cause overlying muscle guarding tightness. So paying attention to compensations is going to be a whole thing in itself. But in terms of joint specific movement, we need to move each joint through the fullest range of motion possible, clockwise, counterclockwise. Usually you want to go through a good 3 to 4 reps each direction, but in terms of now, we'll go through 1 each joint and we'll move on from there. So these are also known as CARs, or controlled articular rotations, or workspaces. How much can you move that joint in the biggest range of motion? So what workspace can you find yourself or that joint moving in, okay? If we're gonna focus on moving and doing an upper body workout, okay, what joints are needed? The joints of the neck, the torso, the shoulder blade or the scapulothoracic joint, the glenohumeral joint, usually working in with the AC joint, so your shoulder. We're going to need the elbow joint if we're going to flex or strain our arm, and then all the joints of the wrists. And if you want to take that step further, you can go into fingers and those joints as well. But I'll tackle that when we go into wrist extensors, because that'll work as the whole upper body arm just the same as well. So let's first start off with the neck. For this one, if you haven't followed, we're going to go tucking the chin down to your chest, sweeping your chin to the side, starting to rotate, tilt back around. You should feel a stretch in the opposite side in which you rotate. If there's sharp pain on the closing angle side, diminish the angle in which you rotate, and then continue on, go from there. Now, you can also do, if you feel sharp pain on one side, you can go back the complete opposite direction. Right before where you feel that sharp pain, diminish the angle and continue from there. We don't want to move into the sharp pain. Again, both directions, counterclockwise, fullest range of motion possible. clockwise, counterclockwise, okay? Now we can focus on either full spine, but for this case, thoracic spine especially. For most people, crossing their arms or touching the opposite side shoulders, stabilizing the neck, and the focus is moving the torso, mid-back, thoracic spine, and rib cage, okay? So you can do this by taking a breath in, holding, so we expand the ribs and intercostal space. Start by flexing just a little bit forward, twisting first, then extending when you can't twist anymore. Extend back, twist back over till you can't tilt anymore, and then you rotate back to center, okay? Again, we're gonna go opposite direction. Breath in, hold, flex, rotate as much as you can. Start to tilt, extend, come across opposite way, and then rotate back to center, okay? That is thoracic spine mixing in with rib cage. What else do we need? We need scapulothoracic joints. We can either do this with the arms in front of us, contracting all the muscles in the arm, so everything's straight, squeezing all the muscles and stabilizing the rib cage, torso, and neck. And then we're gonna start off by reaching forward, shrug, rotate back into depression, and then reach forward and up from there. Opposite way, from reaching, depress, retract backwards, shrug up, reach forward, and relax there, okay? There's another way if you want to do it with your arm on your side. This will be more for AC joint or anterior capsule work, but there's a bunch of different ways you can go about this. Arm by your side, thumb facing straight forward, palm to your side, keeping all the muscles in your arm straight, contracted. Same thing with your torso. We're gonna bring our shoulder down, depressing down, rolling forward till you can't anymore. Shrug up to the ear, rotate backwards as far back as you can without twisting the thoracic spine to rib cage, depress down, and then back to neutral. Same thing, opposite direction, and back down, okay? That is the scapulothoracic joint. Now let's get the glenohumeral joint, AC. So again, arm completely contracted, same thing, torso, bringing our arm across our body, all the way to arm to ear, rotate towards the ear as you're pushing back and away to where you want your thumb to end extended, or your thumb facing away from your body, and then come back to center. When you start backwards, you first want to start with your thumb straight back till you can't anymore, and then start to open up, untwisting, so your palm then goes to your body and then rotates in front of you, palm facing forward, and then back to your side, okay? Both directions, okay? The more you get to that angle of tightness where you can't move anymore, that would be more level 2. You can add in weight level 3. So if people want to work on joint specific effort, I'll show you a couple things here in a sec with weight, or whether it's dumbbells, kettlebells, bands, rather, either or. Now, let's go into elbows. Again, fullest range of motion possible. Arm to your side, palm opened. We're going to start by rotating the palm outwards as you flex your bicep. Once you can't bend anymore, we're going to rotate your palm facing outwards, straightening your arm, and then both clockwise, counterclockwise, go the opposite direction, okay? Then we're going to tackle the wrist. So with the wrist, if you need to grab your other arm below, underneath, and attach to the outside bone of your forearm of the opposite arm, that can help from rolling the wrist that you're focusing on, okay? Doesn't matter how you start, where you start. So we'll start extending your arm backwards, start to rotate off to the side, flexing the wrist to your forearm, swiping inwards closer to your body and extending, okay? And then the opposite direction, same type of movement. It works really well if you open up your palms versus fingers together, because then it gets more of the intrinsic muscles of the wrist and hand as well. You can do the same thing, thumb, clockwise, counterclockwise, and then fingers, flexion, extension, or try to extend all of your fingers, all of your wrists as far back and out as you can. Now this is where the wrist extension comes in. If you extend, open up your fingers, extend your wrists, start waving off to your side as you bring your arms backwards and forward. This can help shoulder, upper arm, neck, which often get neglected for wrist extensors. So that's a good one to add in between working sets of large grip work or heavy weight that you have to lift usually from the ground, or pull-ups, any type of overhead pulling movements that also help quite well. That is joint specific work. That is how you can add that in. Now those training the joints, that can be added in between each lift, especially if you're generating a lot of intensities. So it's almost like an upload of whatever effort you just did of those specific joints or that specific exercise, that if you add in joints afterwards, that information can get put back up to the brain, which can not only, one, help generate the intensity and effort easier, but it increases your range of motion as you're strengthening your body. So kill two birds with one stone, might as well. Next, we're gonna add in rotational work with the joints and the workspaces. Well, we can start off by especially thoracic spine and shoulders, okay? So we can either do this by grabbing a band and work on twisting movements. So we have a band here, you can attach it to an object, have your arms closer to your side, just generating twisting movements of your spine as your hips are facing forward, head is facing forward, twisting off to the side and back to center. If you want to really go more for the rotational work, have your body face complete 180 from the insertion of how the band is held, and then start to twist off to whatever direction that band is pulling you towards, which you can get a little bit more range of motion that way. Or if you just want to stand perpendicular, that works just as fine. The more challenging portion, if you have the band farther away, it just creates more of a fulcrum. So then you can either go band back to center, or you can twist as far over as you possibly can. Now, if you vary the angle upwards, you can either come across your body, or you can come back and down. And this is where you can vary different areas of rehab for shoulder conditions based on adding in front joint capsule of the shoulder to back joint capsule of the shoulder. Perfect for golfers, anyone that swings objects, desk workers, pretty much everyone for that matter, okay? So that is rotational work of the torso rib cage. Like I said, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about it, but we're focusing on not only twisting movements, because mainly the joints in the thoracic spine are laid down for twisting movements primarily. So not only do we want to move the joints in that direction, but we're laying down rotational effort of oftentimes the core abdominal tissues from the front all the way around to the lower back. And then also engaging the arms, stabilizing, but the effort and movement is through the rib cage, thoracic spine. Now, to warm up the shoulders, let's go and move those into extension, flexion with rotation. Now, because the joint is the first line of communication to the brain, rotational work is also incredibly needed. So for example, for those that are not watching, I'm extending my arm backwards, so my humerus or upper arm bone is going forward. So that is bleeding a lot of effort into the front anterior capsule of the labrum and a bunch of different tissues of the bicep head, of the pectoralis tissues, even some of the muscles in the front of the neck. So as we go through, arm goes backwards, you start rotational work and you go time under tension as long as you possibly can, or bring your arm backwards, squeezing all the muscles in your arm, or if you want to put an object behind you, wall, and then trying to put pressure of your hand holding onto the object down into the ground or forward will help bleed the energy to the front of the capsule, which will then help subsequently for the tendons, especially as the tissues are lengthened. So if you have any problems with your bicep, head, tendons, lengthen, contract, but pay attention to if you have injuries, there's a bicipital groove that the tendon come in and out of. So be cautious that there's not as much snapping when you go into rotation, or if you hold that position, that if you put pressure that it's not painful. You might have to move your arm inwards or outwards. So just something to pay attention to there. Okay, so now as we warmed up the tissues, we generated the intensity of the nervous system through intensities, workspaces / cars. Now we're gonna start laying down tissue, okay? Now, pretty much we're training and rehabbing from internal communication and deeper structures to the more superficial tissues overlying, okay? Now we'll start off with the neck, then we'll get into the arms, shoulders, and a little bit of the torso. So to address some of the tissues on the neck, we want to first start off by the deep tissue. Hi bud, excuse me. We want to start off by some of the deep tissues on the front of the neck, especially the longus colli, which connects to the front part of the spine. So we're talking deep tissues. Now, oftentimes, if you have headaches, especially tension headaches at the base of the skull, there's different studies that we brought up in previous episodes that if you tuck your chin to your chest, lifting your head up off the ground table and holding that there as long as possible, that's going to help increase the space between your C1 top bone in your neck and the base of the skull. Now, holding this as long as you possibly can, focusing on making sure that the chin doesn't jut upwards. If it does, relax and reset, because then it causes muscle contraction of the SCM, which is not really our necessary big focus target. Again, holding as long as you possibly can, the goal being a minute. You might start shaking, that's normal. You might cramp, that's okay. As long as there's no sharp pain, you're gonna be solid. Tucking the chin to the chest, lifting the head up off the table ground, holding as long as possible. You can add in rotational work as long as the chin is tucked, and then relax from there after you're done. All right, next let's start targeting some of the tissues on the back of the neck. Now there's a bunch of different tissues there which go from not only the jaw to the shoulder, but also the shoulder, mid-back, up to the neck as well. We're gonna target the back area and laying down some of the tissues there. Now we can do this a couple different ways, either going to the edge of the bed, a couch, and then focusing on jutting the chin back and then extend back to neutral and back to the ground. Retract chin to your neck, extend your head back and forth, okay? You can also just extend your head back multiple angles, so you're extending, tilting, making sure no sharp pain, of course, or extending and rotate, okay? You can add in weight from the back of the head hanging off the ground, but the huge focus for most people is not to move into sharp pain, especially if bones are stuck or fixated out of alignment position. That can cause a lot of nerve pinching, which can cause pain going down to your arms, numbness, tingling, weakness, and a bunch of other symptoms. If that is you, I'd suggest going to a chiropractor, physical therapist, where they can diagnose, treat those specific conditions. Okay, now let's add in the muscles on the outside portion of the neck. Now this is going to involve a couple different ways of going about it. Now with this, if you want to incorporate your upper arm with your neck, this is a really good way that you can go about it. Grabbing a dumbbell, kettlebell, or even band attached to the ground will work just fine. We can start off by tilting whatever side is holding the weight, or if just no weight at all, just tilting the head off to the side. You can depress your shoulder downwards and almost do a side ab crunch. From there, we're going to start by tilting the head and then shrugging that same side shoulder up and back, okay? You can also add in synchronized movements as well. So we tilt our head off to the side, depress our shoulder, and then everything tilts at the same time to the opposite direction, tilting opposite of your neck, and then shrugging of the shoulder, okay? If you want to isolate just the neck from the upper arm, stabilize the arm, tilting the neck off to the side, and then going back and forth, tilting one ear to shoulder to the opposite side, okay? A little bit more useful of your time, tilting your shoulder and shrugging, okay? I mean, you could do the opposite way, tilting into a shoulder shrug. That incorporates more of the upper traps. So usually we want a better glide, so this usually works better opposite side. Now, not only do we want to work in the frontal plane or side-to-side movements, but there's a whole 45 oblique range of motion that we can move into in front of us and behind us. So we can move into tilting our chin down in front, either to the opposite shoulder in which we're holding weight, or the focus of tilting towards, or extending your arm backwards. But if you do have their weight, I suggest bringing it 180 degrees opposite direction in front of you. Extend and rotate works better than extending and tilting. So that is a different way that you can lay down tissues on the outside of your neck. Let's go into the torso and neck itself, working into multiple planes in the sagittal plane, so working into chin flexion, into mid-back thoracic spine extension, okay? Oftentimes, which is missed, is the thoracic spine has joints that are laid down like from superior to inferior, so from the sky down to the floor. Now, those glide backwards, but enough to where you can allow better mobility and less tightness throughout your whole upper back, mid-back. So we're going to involve the neck, rib cage, thoracic spine as we go through. So let's start off by tucking your chin down to your chest, flexing your whole rib cage spine down like an ab crunch, and then extending your head backwards, and then trying to depress your shoulders down. Now, the huge focus for most of you, especially when you go into extension, is depressing your shoulders down. So it's just a little bit of motion. And yes, there's a large portion where I'm extending in my lower back. But the focus and where my body and mind connection is the bottom part of the rib cage to the top part of the rib cage. So if you need to hold your arms, shoulders, I suggest you eliminate and make sure your head is extended so you can get a little bit more motion. And the reason why we want to depress our shoulders and extend our head is it helps extension of the joints in the upper back, upper thoracic spine. You can add in rotation to the right, to the left, okay? Now, that is huge because that is oftentimes people that have no idea, okay? So now we're going to add in a rotational effort, full body, but it's going to be primarily focused on core to extremity work with rotational of the thoracic spine and rib cage. So this is a perfect one for any dynamic effort movement. You're going to need a decent amount of space. Unless you have a home gym, it's going to be hard to do this at local gyms unless it's not busy and you have a lot of space to work in. Or if you have dumbbells, kettlebells that you can hold to your side, somewhat similar as well. We're just working on fulcrum, so the larger the object is outwards, especially barbell, the more pressure we're going to get, especially into eccentric or lengthening effort in the opposite way in which we twist, which can build the core torso tissues. So I'll show you a couple different ways. You want to start off, if you're going to do this, do it non-weight first and then build up from there, but I'll show you weighted so you have a general understanding. Okay, so as we go through putting the barbell lightweight, if you would rack it like a squat rack, okay? Now from here, we can incorporate feet. It can be sport-specific movement, but again, the focus is going to be on the torso, spine, rotational work from there. So we can start off by twisting, getting a dynamic staggered stance to where one foot is ahead of the other foot's back, not completely backwards, but stacked in the center of your body. From there, we're going to twist our body both directions. Take a step forward, rotate, step forward, and you can go forward and then backwards as well. okay? If you want to open up your stride and then go into twisting movements of the body, you're going to start noticing as you twist from one side to the other, you're going to work on adductor tissues of your thighs, quads, especially transferring weight. If you want to get into different angles, you can add in tilting, okay? If you want to add in muscles for swimming, you can tilt backwards into extension. Okay, just gives you a different understanding of how everything is combined and working together as a whole. So rotational work, both planes frontal, sagittal, and a little transverse. Now we're going to get into shoulders. All right, going back through laying down tissue of a muscle and tissue group that is often neglected is shoulder adduction, ADD adduction. It's pretty much bring your arm to your side, and whether it's to your side in front of you or to your side in behind you. If you bring and put your arms out straight in front of you, palms facing forward, notice the angle of your elbow. Does it deviate outwards? If so, usually the tissues of not only the tricep, medial bicep can often become either weak or untrained, or you have lateral epicondylitis, a lot of tension from typing, desk work. This is something that is huge to add into your everyday workout routine or warm-ups or something thereof. So for starting off, especially for this type of tissue, I would want to start off intensities, palms facing forward, arms to my side, and squeezing all my muscles in the body, but the focus is going to be on trying to deviate our pinkies into our bodies, and then keeping our arms straight, our elbows to our side, or our wrists to our side. Either if your arms automatically go to your side, bring your wrist in front of you or behind you, works really well. So coming up to a wall, for here we have a little bit of the exercise area. The way your palm is faced matters, but for this case scenario, we want to lengthen all the tissues and try to bring your arm to your side as everything's lengthened. If you want to even go a step further, having your arm up overhead, holding onto a pull-up bar, and then trying to bring your arm to your side, like doing a side crunch at the same time in which you're generating effort, okay? If we want to add in repetitive movement and start laying down tissue, you can grab an exercise band, tie a knot, close a door, and then hold into resistance or attach it to a workout area itself. From here, palms facing forward, bring your arm to your side, holding that time under tension for as long as you can, or going down the band and having your arm come in front of your body while the whole arm straight, or behind the side of your body. Okay, front, back, just bring it off to the side, holding that time under tension as long as you can, or go for reps at a time, okay? That is one way that you can address the adductor tissues of your shoulder. Now start laying down tissue on the front and back side of the joint capsule of the glenohumeral joint specifically. We can go and do this a couple different ways. If we want to work on the front capsule, like we said previous, if you look at the upper arm humeral bone, when the arm goes backwards, if you were doing dips, that humeral head is going to the front portion of the capsule, which is having a pulling tension from front to back, A to P, either holding at the end of a dip, squeezing all the muscles the best you possibly can, focusing on the front of your shoulder specifically, not pec, and now bleed into the joint capsule, some of the tendons, ligaments. Now, let's say we want to work on the posterior capsule, or when the humeral head goes backwards, but your arm goes forward, usually palm facing up to the ceiling into a chin-up position, and trying to bring your arm to your side or pulling down your elbow down to your body, okay? If you're going to focus on that, even go slower down from a pull-up all the way down as far as you can, depressing the shoulders downwards and then squeezing all the muscles in your arms, torso, That'll also help significantly from there. If you want to add in a little bit better joint-specific work, trying to bring your arm downwards or continuous effort down, your shoulders depressed downwards will help bleed into the posterior or backside portion of your joint capsule of your shoulder specifically. So you can go for continuous effort, longer periods of movement, of time under tension with your arm behind you, either against gravity or holding a weight or resistance against a band. So those are a few different ways that you can target and start thinking about how to address the tissues of your shoulder. Let's get into the next lower body workout. We'll show you a few things from there. Now we're going to get into the lower body workout, focusing on all the tissues around the thigh joint, a little bit of effort in the lower back. Also through this, we're going to be involving specific muscles and stabilization of the feet, and also posterior chain, which will involve backwards walking, and then one special thing at the end that will show you as well. So starting off with much the same with the upper body workout, we're going to start with effortful movement, bled into the joints first because that's the first line of communication to the brain and back down. So we're going to get into hip workspace, lower back workspace or lumbar, thoracic workspace, knees, ankles, feet, and you can go toes as well, but we'll start from there. So let's start with top down thoracic spine, cross your arms, touching opposite side shoulders, flexing down just a tad, twist as much as you can, extend back, twist, rotate around, and then back to center, same thing, but opposite direction, okay? Now focusing on lower back specifically, crossing arms again, bending down as far as you possibly can forward. We're going to tilt, rotate around your pelvic rim, extend backwards. Make sure it's not into sharp pain. We'll come back down to center, and same thing, opposite way. Extension, untilt around the pelvic rim and back to center, okay? Again, about 3 to 4 reps, both directions, each area. Now hips. We can do hips a couple different ways. First, you want to start, if you're going to do it standing, either holding a support system if this is new for you. Bring, the more challenging it is, legs straight, easier leg bent, or knee bent. We can bring I'll go start easier, our leg inwards, crossing our body. We're then going to start bringing the knee up to the chest as far as we can. We're then going to keep the foot inwards as we rotate our leg off to the side. And then once you get all the way over, you can start tilting and rotating as your leg is just to the side. Start extending backwards and then tap the ground. You can bend your knee, bring your leg in across your body, come back around opposite direction, untilt, and then come back to center, okay? Again, I'll go through the opposite leg, okay? Now, if you want to do this laying down, it usually works better laying on your side, okay? Again, the focus, leg across your body, bring it up to your chest, bring it up to your side, and then back down to the ground, okay? Both directions work really well, okay? Lay in both sides and then build up from there. Now, let's look at joint-specific effort for the knees. Joint-specific effort for the knees, you can do this seated, you can do this standing, focusing on legs straight, rotating the foot inwards, start to bend the knees as far as you possibly can, rotate the foot outwards, straighten your leg as the foot is rotated out, okay? Same thing, keep the foot outwards, bend your knee till you can't anymore, foot inwards, straighten the knee. And you can go both directions, okay? Now let's focus on then the ankles. So if you want to zone in and making sure that we focus all the effort into the ankle joint specifically, whatever ankle you're focusing on, that opposite side arm goes underneath the thigh, hamstring, The other arm of the same side of ankle we're working holds the front shin bone. And then the arm, hand that is underneath the back of your leg, it holds to the forearm of that same side arm of the ankle you're moving, okay? If it's easier for you to understand, watch the video. We'll go from there. So as you go through the fullest range of motion, we want to keep your toes splayed upwards and then try to move down. Point your toes up to the ceiling as you bring your ankle up, dorsiflex or ankle to your thigh, ankle to your shin. We're going to rotate out, big circle, point your toes down, roll your foot inwards, splay your toes open up, start rotating opposite way. Again, both directions, pointing toes down to the ground as your ankle goes down, toes off to the side, toes up to the ceiling as you move your ankle. Again, both directions, both ankles, fullest range of motion possible. Now, let's start off with joint range of motion with rotational work. So for us specifically, we're focusing on ball and socket joints, so hip works really well with this. So I suggest laying on your side. Essentially, it's going to be a hip workspace, moving through the biggest range of motion possible, but with rotations. Whatever leg you're going to focus on, that's the leg that's going to be up to the ceiling as you lay on your side. We're going to bring your leg all the way across your body the best you can. We're going to start by rotating, internal, external rotation, small micro movements as the leg is straight, working in the biggest range of motion possible. Front to back, rotational work, same thing. As you keep your leg straight, both directions, both legs. To make this more challenging, to build up not only the joint, but the tissues all the way around and surrounding the leg, put an ankle weight on. That will really challenge you, okay? Across your body, rotational work. The slower you go, the more challenging it is, focusing on legs straight. You can probably notice when your leg goes off to the side, cramping, which is fine. You can take a break, go back into that same range of motion. Both directions, clockwise, counterclockwise. Suggest good 3 to 5 sets. You can break it into 2 sets if you want, or go into continuous movement till you can't anymore, until failure. That will build up the joint capsule, and like I said, all the tissues surrounding the thigh joint. All right, now let's get into laying down tissues of the hip capsule. We're going to start on the front quadrant of the thigh. So this is going to involve hip flexors, it's going to involve quads, core tissues, some of the tissues and muscles of the pelvic floor. So that might involve, in certain positions, squeezing your glutes or trying to tuck your tailbone into your body, just to get a little different pulling mechanism, but there's some variability with that. So let's start off by addressing the tissues on the front of the quad thigh. So first off, just by keeping your legs straight in front of you, if you want to support backwards, cool. Just changes the angle on the hip. And trying to lift your leg up, either holding as long as you possibly can. You can add in some rotational effort, or if you want to go up and over objects as your toes are facing upwards, you can do that as well. Once you notice that your leg goes off to the side outwards, you might want to rotate your foot out, or else that could lead to some impingement symptoms or pain as you bring your thigh up to your body on the front portion of the hip, which that involves usually capsule joint effort, or the joint capsule of your hip has too much space and the capsule is not stiff and tight, which then I would go back to rotational work with the workspaces or cars. And again, we can work for continuous movement or effort in that same plane of motion, either rotational work up and down, holding it as high as you possibly can, legs straight. That will also help as well. Now let's add in a little bit of lengthening, not only from the back portion side of the joint capsule, so the back of your hip joint. You can do this a couple different ways. If you want to do this standing, laying down, lifting your leg up, straight leg raise, holding continuous effort. From there, if you want to bring your knee to your chest, bending your knee, squeezing your glute. So we're bringing the femur head backwards into the back portion of the capsule and it's lengthened. And then squeezing your glute. If you want to add in bending your knee up to your chest, but leg off to the side, that works really well. Add in some rotation of the foot as you bring your knee up to your chest. That will also help for different areas of the front of the hip capsule joint as well. Next, we can work into the back posterior side of the hip capsule. To address this, we did a little bit with bring your knee up to your chest and we're lengthening the tissues on the back side. If you want to address some of the tissues on the front of the hip capsule, especially lengthening, this usually goes in the means of leg extension or bring your leg backwards as you're either running or just bring your leg backwards itself. So we first want to lengthen the tissues. So if you lay face down prone, finding books or for this case, little blocks, putting in front of the knee, above the kneecap, so it doesn't bleed energy to your knee joint, which can be very uncomfortable. We want to also then, as your leg's in that position, center the pelvis. You can bend your knee ideally, and then try to put pressure of your knee down into the front of the blocks, books. We're contracting the muscles and tissues on the front of the hip joint. And then we're adding rotational work. You can add by bringing your hips outwards to get the outside portion of the joint capsule, out front side portion. Or you can do the same thing but turn your hips inwards and trying to bring your knees down to the ground. So you can vary the degree in what tissues you're targeting based on how you move your pelvis, but you should keep consistent effort of your knee down to the ground as you rotate through. Again, not moving to sharp pain. If so, back off that specific plane and direction in which you move, and then go from there. That can go till failure or for at least 2 minutes total a day to create tissue adaptation. But that will vary depending on the intensity in which you drive your knee forward into the ground and or soreness, other symptoms from there as well. Let's go back to the posterior capsule of the hip joint, which involves the glute complex, it involves the hamstrings, and to a certain extent, some of the adductor tissues and the muscles on the inside portion of your thighs. Let's start off focusing on hamstrings, so working bottom up to the hip capsule. Now, most times, people neglect bending their knee off to the side outwards or off to the side inwards. Bending off to the side outwards or bringing and bending our knee with the foot going inwards. So one I like to work with patients is what's known as hammy up and overs. So we are sitting on a chair, we're bending the knee with the foot in and go up and around an object, or holding the knee bent and working, rotating our foot in and out as we're holding pressure and that contraction against gravity of our foot. You can add on ankle weights, which will help even more burn the hamstrings as well. You can add in rotational work with your foot going in and out while your leg bottom thigh is outwards, so going to hip internal rotation, or hip goes into external rotation, foot goes into closer to the body, and add in rotational work as well. All of which will help significantly for hamstring strength and also bleeding that into the bottom portion of the hip capsule joint as well. Now, one awesome way to address the glute complex without going to hyperextension in the lower back is mainly this way. So you're going to be facing downwards. One of the knees is going to be bent, and your body's going to be over that bent knee. From there, we want to hold on to a bed, couch, table, and then extending the leg up backwards. It's going to limit hyperextension of the lower back, but it's going to bleed all the energy to the glute complex. Keeping the leg as straight as you possibly can, adding rotational work, but more or less trying to keep your leg up off the ground against gravity as long as you possibly can. If you want to add on ankle weights to build up from there, even better. You can work your leg inwards, outwards, which will also help for contraction of the glute max, which is one of the powerful tissues. But this usually works well for warm up to start going to squats, deadlifts, different type of explosive lower body movements as well. All right, now we're gonna work on the inside and outside portion tissues of the thigh. Some of this will include the glutes and the hip muscles, but this is an area for most people that gets neglected, especially if you incorporate balance work just the same. As we start by addressing some of these tissues, we can start off with rotational effort in front of our body inwards and backwards. Again, with this, you're going to notice a little bit more stretch, so we're forcing lengthening eccentrically of the outside IT band, tensor fasciae latae, TFL tissue, into the glute complex as well. So, laying on your side, bring the foot in front of you, and then slowly have it bring down across the ground, holding the legs as straight as you can, forcing it down across your body, and then squeezing the muscles in the inside portion of your body. Keeping those tissues contracted, you can add in rotational work. As you bring your leg across your body up to your chest, and is straightened down closer to where your leg is straight or legs are side to side. Okay, now if we want to work behind us, in terms of adductor work, again, we want to extend the leg across our body, squeezing the muscles on the inside portion of the thigh as we go through, add in a little bit of rotational effort of the hip capsule. It's going to be hard to go into rotational work with your knee bent next to straightening your leg. Flexed, bent. So again, that's targeting the adductor tissues or the muscles in the inside front portion of the leg, the inside and the inside back portion of the leg. Hugely important. But next, let's go to the tissues on the outside portion of the leg. Okay, so with this, it's probably important to work up to the weight and get used to the movement. So what we're going to focus on is bringing the leg, stand on one foot, leg across our body, behind us, and in front of us, okay? Now this is usually for explosive type movements. It also can be involve rotational work as well. A little bit more coordination, but as you go through, you're going to start noticing your feet gripping the ground. I suggest for most people to go barefoot shoes or go no shoes at all, just barefoot. So as you bring your legs across your body, it's going to force the toes to stabilize the ground, which will work on the inside and outside arches of the feet. Okay, again, we can go for continuous effort for time, trying to keep our toes facing forward. You can extend backwards as well, but for this, the huge focus is going to be on the leg that we're stabilizing or the leg that's attaching to the ground. So that can work into what's known as a star pattern, okay? So balancing on one foot, bring our leg across our body, tapping down, coming back to center. You can add as many points as you want as you go across your body, which will then help for all the tissues across and around the hip joint. Both feet counterclockwise, same thing, okay? The further out you reach, keeping your balance, the better control proprioception you have of tissues surrounding your hip joint and communication from your legs to your brain. So next, what we're going to work on, continue on the muscles in the inside-outside portion of the legs. It's what's known as adductor side planks. Now, if you find a spot on the ground, find a bench, chair, platform, laying on your side. If you need to have a mat below you, awesome. From there, coming up, holding a side plank, or if you want to come down and up with your leg behind you, that's close to the ground, or in front of you. It's going to primarily help for the tissues on the inside portion of the leg. Leg out and in while holding pressure of your body against the platform. Leg up, hips drop to the ground. Or if you want to hold a weight on the inside portion of your leg, you can work on the one that's free floating. So we want the leg, the outside leg, to be on a surface, or we want the inside portion of the leg stabilized while holding weight and pressure with your leg going forward and backwards, which will help for all the tissues on the inside of the legs. Both directions, both feet, both legs, and then build it from there. So next we're gonna focus on the posterior chain. So this is gonna involve walking backwards. Now you can do this outside, you can do this in the gym on a treadmill. There's a bunch of different ways. Now the focus is gonna be on pushing off of the heel as the toes are facing straight forward. You can also work on some of the tissues more on the back outside portion by turning your feet or legs in one direction versus the other. You can work on bringing your toes outwards, your toes inwards. So there's different types of ways you can go about it. Ideally, working for longer periods of time helps significantly, especially lengthening your hamstrings. So as you push off your heel, you want to push off as the bottom of your foot leaves the ground, okay? It's going to help for all the tissues of the front and backside portion of the thigh. Now finally, the one at the end, specifically for the lower back, which will be a game changer for most people. With this, we're going to focus on effort of moving the bottom few segments of the lower back. Usually these are overused, especially when you have weight against gravity. So we want mobility to create tissue joint space to pump up and hydrate the discs in the lower back. And this is going to be a perfect way to go about it. Now, we're going to start off no weight. You then can add weight. I'll show you how to do that so you can build up the muscle structure around the lower back specifically. You can do this by going up to a bed, a couch. It's hard to do on a chair. And what we want to focus on is bringing the front hip bones to the edge of whatever surface you're going to lean on. You want to have something that you can hold your upper body so you isolate your lower back. Now it's a weird movement, it might look odd, but the focus is, again, movement, specifically of the lower back bones and segments to help create glide movement, to not fixate some of the joints, which oftentimes, for most people, get overused, lead to degeneration, and most people have symptoms that go down the legs, weakness, numbness, tingling, a bunch of other symptoms from there. So, hips, front hip bones to the side of the table, bed, feet hanging, dangling off to the ground. Now you're not going to push up with your feet. All the effort's going to be in your lower back. So we want to bring our hip backwards into extension, squeezing the lower back, and then we're going to lengthen the lower back down. Okay? So we squeeze the lower back like you extend your upper back backwards and back and forth, flexion, extension, flexion here. You can tilt with your hip going up to the right side, back down, tilt your hip going up to the left side, back down. Again, back and forth until you feel a good muscle burn, and we're not pushing off of the ground, so you can do this with your legs off the ground as well. Just gives you a good understanding with that there. Now, to build it from there, if you want to connect an exercise band and put it around your lower back, you can tie that band to weight and then have that dangle, and then it's going to be having the weight take you down forward and then putting pressure backwards, okay? So a lot of this will be pelvic tilts, but you're gonna notice more of the effort in the lower back specifically. Again, not moving into sharp pain, but that gives you a good understanding of how to build up those tissues, specifically for the lower back when the joints are facing almost forward and backwards, which that's the main type of movement. The better you can build that up, the way better in terms of not only symptoms are, but in terms of stabilizing that lower back as well. Now with some of these upper and lower body type of workouts, again, use some of these specific exercises for where you need in your workouts. And again, if you're gonna spend some time addressing some of the tissues on the front of the hip, outside, inside portion of the hip, backside, or any of the muscles in the upper back, shoulders, neck, whatever tissues you're laying down, go back through after the effort, through the workspaces or cars or greater increased range of motion, or the biggest range of motion you can possibly move in, so you can upload that information which you just did for whatever exercise that is. So what that means is add in the workspace, cars, circles in between heavy lifts or in between sets, and that'll drastically improve and accelerate not only the foundation, so you have less chance of becoming injured, but it'll also help lead to laying down tissues, which increase strength, mobility gains. Huge focus for most people. We're gonna leave it at that for today's podcast.
Perfect. So awesome, guys. If you guys have any questions, if you want more resources, please let us know. We'd love to make those for you. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment, question. We want to help you as much as we can. And we hope that you guys found this valuable. So as always, thank you guys so much.
Woo!
Doc, until next time.
Let's go.
Guys, have a great day.
Disclaimer, the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.